The greatest 3 weeks in all of sports will be coming to an end tomorrow night as either Baylor or Gonzaga will be cutting down the nets. And what a championship game that we will have on display. This is the matchup that we were all highly anticipating, and it seemed like that Gonzaga and Baylor were the two favorites going into the tournament. They've been the two favorites all season long. We were supposed to have this matchup back in December, but it got canceled because of the circumstances that we were dealing with back in 2020. But we get this matchup for the national championship game. But before I get to the preview and predictions for this championship game, I want to talk about that unbelievable game that we saw last night. And as far as I'm concerned, this is, I would say, in the top 10 in my mind in greatest college basketball games of all time. Without a doubt, this was the best game of the tournament. And it's, in my mind, there's probably still some tournament games from recent memory that you could argue could possibly be better than this one. But you've got to give UCLA credit, not only them, but you got to give credit all around from the players to the coaches, because I felt like we needed a game like this. We needed a game that was intense and exciting from start to finish. And I was really worried personally after that first semifinal that we saw between Houston and Baylor. And Baylor ran away with that game easily. And I had some concerns, and I'm sure you might have as well, because I was thinking that Gonzaga was going to run UCLA right out of the gym. I really thought that would happen, but UCLA did everything they can do to win that game. It just wasn't their night last night. And they kept up with Gonzaga from start to finish, and there were moments where I was expecting Gonzaga to pull away and really close the game out, because this game was starting to remind me of BYU and Gonzaga in their conference title game, where BYU held their own for the majority of that game, but then Gonzaga pulls away the later on the game goes, and BYU lets that game slip away from the very end. I thought that was going to happen to UCLA. I am impressed that UCLA kept up with Gonzaga and they matched up to them nicely. And UCLA has nothing to be ashamed about. They made it all the way to the Final Four. They overcame adversity multiple times throughout the tournament. They upset Michigan State, BYU. They beat Abilene Christian, who beat Texas in that first round. Alabama and Michigan. They defeated really good competition in that tournament. So they did what they had to do. When you're in UCLA's position, going up against a team like Gonzaga, when you're an underdog, the most significant underdog, and I believe, according to Vegas sports odds, they were, as far as point spread wise, they were the biggest underdog in Final Four history. And their main objective was to stay in the game from start to finish. Because as long as you can stay in that game from start to finish and you're in it within the last 5 minutes, you've got a really good shot to win the game. And UCLA, they nearly matched Gonzaga as far as field goal percentage. They even out-rebounded Gonzaga 32-26. But that entire game, I think, is going to be a game to remember for a long time, especially the overtime period. And just to set the scene, Johnny Juzang, he sets up an opportunity to tie up the game at 90 in the last remaining seconds of the game, misses the shot, gets his own rebound, and he makes the shot tied up at 90 with 3 seconds left. This is where you're thinking, well, possibly double overtime. But Jalen Suggs had other plans as he banks in the game-winning three-pointer to send Gonzaga to the national championship game. And now we are set for the national championship game. I think this title game is going to go down for the ages. I think that this could be one of, if not the best championship game that we have ever seen. And when you look at this matchup, these two teams, they were clearly the best two teams in college basketball all season. And when you look at this matchup on paper, you would automatically assume that this will be a high-scoring game and to expect a lot of points. And I'm expecting a lot of points as well. Gonzaga is averaging nearly 92 points per game, while Baylor is averaging 83 points per game. And Gonzaga leads the country in field goal percentage as well as points per game, while Baylor is 11th in field goal percentage. So these are very accurate teams as far as field goal percentage is concerned. So some keys to the game. For Baylor, you've got to protect the paint, and you got to get Drew Timme into foul trouble early, because Drew Timme was a big difference maker in that semifinal against UCLA. And for Gonzaga, you've got to protect the three-point line because Baylor is leading the nation in three-point field goal percentage. And you got to feed Timme, Kispert, and Ayayi in the paint. Take advantage of that size of Timme, Kispert, and Ayayi inside the paint. Because the paint is one of the three elements that I think will be a really big factor in deciding who wins this game. The paint, whether or not Gonzaga can take advantage in the paint, because they were dominant inside the paint against UCLA, especially Drew Timme. Whether or not they can score in the paint or Baylor is able to protect the paint really well. Rebounding. Rebounding is an important element when you're facing off against a team that can score points in a hurry and that are efficient. You got to take advantage of those rebounds. You've got to limit second chance opportunities. And you also got to be ready to get boards to force second chance points for yourself as well. And turnovers. Turnovers are going to be a key thing as well to look for because both these teams played pretty clean basketball throughout this entire tournament. And the turnover battle is going to be huge in a matchup like this. I am interested in seeing how Gonzaga is going to come out in this game. After that emotional win against UCLA in that semifinal, while Baylor, they beat Houston convincingly. And I also want to see if the refs are going to let them play. Because I remember back in 2017 when it was Gonzaga and North Carolina for the championship, a lot of fouls were called in that game. And it felt like there was a foul called on almost every other possession. And I wonder, since it's the title game, are they going to let these teams, are they going to be more lenient towards calls? Or we're going to see another game like that, where a bunch of fouls are called in the game, and it becomes a survival of the fittest type game as far as who avoids the foul trouble. At least as far as which team is going to have their best players stay out of the foul trouble. But the way I see this game, I think that Baylor matches up to Gonzaga really nicely. I think that both these teams match up to each other, which is why I think is going to make a great game. I think the guard play for Baylor can match up to Gonzaga. And I think this game is going to be really close from start to finish. I think that Gonzaga, they had their moment in the tournament where they had to overcome adversity a little bit. And I think that's going to pay off from this matchup, as I think Gonzaga cuts down the nets and wins by a score of 95-91. And for a bonus, I think this game will go into overtime because we need an exciting finish of the tournament. And I think tomorrow night's championship game will bring just that.